somebody that uses AI generation can make somebody say something that they never said. They can put it online, which is free. You can reach millions of people. It could spark issues in the world, and it's a lot easier than before. And it's like the way we haven't seen Hitler coming to power, that's the way we don't see what's happening now with AI, where it could create certain ripples in society that aren't normal.
Welcome to A Journalist's Guide to AI. I'm Yumi Wilson, your host, and today is a very special day. First, it's special because I'm actually recording a guest live, if you will. I mean, I'm in the studio, let's say that. And then second, I'm in Glasgow, Scotland, and a place I've never been. So I'm excited for many reasons, but mostly, I'm excited because I am interviewing the person who makes this show come together, the person who makes it look and sound amazing. And he is Bogdan Bratis. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Bogdan. He is not just an amazing podcast producer. He is also a musician. And about 15 years ago, he was on X Factor. That's right, X Factor. And I'm getting this chance to sit with him and pick his brain a little bit about not just his career, but also how he makes podcasts come to life, sound so professional, and where this industry is going and how AI is impacting it. All of that we are going to be talking about today. So let's just get started. Bogdan.
Hello.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here with you at your studio and to have you as our guest.
Thank you for coming. I know that you had planned this trip in Glasgow for quite some time. Coming here in Glasgow and actually meeting my client in person, that's one of the best things ever. I must tell you, like, you look exactly the same as you look on Zoom. So
thank you. I will take that. Very, it's a secret, but I'll share it, is when I was doing online dating, you know, it's like you go out on the date and the person would go, you look as well as your picture or better. That was always like my goal. So thank you for that. So before we get into the AI and how it's impacting everything that we do, I want to start with your journey. You were a musician, you are a musician. You were featured on X Factor in Romania. And how did you go from that world to producing podcasts?
Right. So when I started music, it was around when I was 8. And I always wanted to be a musician. That was my career goal, and that's what I wanted to do for a living. And basically, at some point, I decided to go to X Factor. It was an impulse decision. I told my mom in the kitchen that, look, I just want to do this because I saw all the artists on TV, and I said, like, that's one of the fastest way you can get on TV. And I believed in my talent. I believed in my voice and my music. An entire country also believed in it as well, because I reached the final of X Factor, which was quite an achievement for me since I was only 17 years old. After that, I had to go back to school. So the fame kind of like, it lasted for a few years, but since I had to go back to my normal life, it was a really weird regression from the achievements that I made there, and then going back to my hometown for a year to finish my studies. And then at some point, I managed to move to Bucharest. I moved to Bucharest when I was 18, so 1 year after. And I actually remember that I got on the train for the first time by myself. And I told my dad goodbye. And my first beer I ever had as a major, if that makes sense, I had it with a stranger on the train. He actually gave me a beer, said, there you go, because it was my birthday on that day. So that was quite interesting. So it was an 8-hour journey to Bucharest because it takes some time to get there. And then I arrived into a shared accommodation living with other people. I didn't care about anything other than music at that point. So for me, it was fine just sharing a house with other musicians, and I actually had the chance to learn quite a lot of stuff from them as well, especially my floor mate, because we had 2 rooms on the same floor. He was an audio producer And then he inspired me a little bit to kind of like start reading about audio production. I was reading books about audio in general in English. So that helped me a lot with learning English and all that. Obviously, I managed to learn English at school as well. But then at some point, after playing in bands in Bucharest and having a little bit of a successful career, I would say, like starting my career in there as a musician, I decided to move to the UK to study popular music production.
Yeah.
And then introduced me even more into the backstage of the showbiz business, right? So I started producing music for other people. I started working with brands on audio branding, creating jingles for them, sonic logos and all that. So I started getting slowly into that production side of audio, if that makes sense. So the audio that people don't necessarily applaud a lot, but it's always there. That's how I got into audio like more seriously. And then I graduated from university with a first class degree, and I started to start my own business, my company, and here I am.
And that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
But I do want to back up because you said a lot. 17 years old, you are confident beyond, right? You're beyond words. You know you're going to get onto this top show where many, many people try and they don't make it. There was something within you from very early on, it sounds like, where you're like, I am going to crush it. I am going to do this. And then you get on a train and you are meeting people you've never met, and then you're reading books in English and learning new trade, new skills.
Yeah.
So before we get into the podcast question, what was your driving force? What led you to just decide to go from this to this to this and higher?
Curiosity, first thing first. I love learning anything that's, interesting to me, and I like challenges a lot. Once I start doing something, no matter what it is, I become a little bit obsessed of that topic or whatever. Like, for example, I'm currently working on SEO on my business, and I'm researching everything about SEO and finding the latest tricks and trends and all that. I focus on a topic and I try to master it, or I try to get, every angle of that topic. So that was with music, for example. Once I started like singing and mastering my voice and all that, I started getting into the production side because I felt that's something that I like. And also I didn't have any money to pay other producers to produce my music. So I said, well, this is a skill. It's good to have. So why not learning that yourself? So it's always like a combination of curiosity, not having enough, and also the driving factor of trying to learn every angle of a certain subject. I just like doing that.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned something. Number one, making money as a creative is incredibly important and very difficult, perhaps always, but certainly nowadays. You also mentioned something that I think a lot of content creators are thinking about, which is SEO. How do they get their content discovered? How do they go viral? How do they, become a top show story? So what have you learned about that?
First thing first, SEO, like, it's not new. And I'm not a huge expert in SEO. However, I'm using SEO as one of the tools to drive traffic to a podcast. And there's also something called podcast SEO, which deals with how you actually appear on certain players. Like, for example, on Apple Podcasts, if you want to be the first result there for a specific keyword you type into the search results, there are specific techniques you can use in order to do that. SEO is something that every business, no matter the size of the business, needs to do. And coupling that with podcasting, it's a great idea because you kind of like shoot two targets at once, and it helps out with so first thing first, you have the content marketing strategy. That's one angle of it, but then you have the SEO, which is some of the technical part, but also involves content strategy as well. So you can use podcasting as a tool to create content and repurpose that content to appear in search results, to appear in AI, for example, to get more people discover your show and all that.
So is that one of the services that you provide? You mentioned also something, and I wonder if you can share it, like one takeaway from having, when you're trying to get shows on Apple, what's one tip that you would give to aspiring podcasters or those who are trying to build their audience?
Have a good name for your show. That's one thing that I've seen a lot of people make mistakes on that. They call their show a very unique name that people may not search very well. It doesn't have keywords in it or anything like that. It's cool to have like a unique name, but will that be discoverable? It's hard to be discovered on Apple Podcasts. And what you can do is make sure that you title your podcast with the industry you're working in. Like, for example, you have AI, right? So a journalist's guide to AI literally has the two most important keywords, journalist and AI in it, which is important. My podcast is called The Pod Files. Well, that's a problem, right? So I actually made that mistake myself, right?
Okay.
The Pod Files, when I started my podcast, I said, I'm just going to find a unique name. And that was my creative mind speaking.
Yeah.
And I said, I like the Pod Files. And I was watching the X-Files, the series.
Love
and then
that
at
show.
Some point, I said, I want to interview people in content marketing and discover what they do to make things happen. And I will treat it as an investigation, as an investigative journalism, if you want to say, right? So you can look into what they've done well that works and how that can be replicated. So how my clients and everybody that listens to the show can do that. So I call my show The Pod Files, and it didn't show up in Apple Podcasts. What I've done after that, even though you have a unique name for your show, you can put something after it. You can, for example, now it's called The Pod Files. And to manipulate how the show is accessed on Apple, I put after that a content marketing podcast in a creator economy word.
Got you. So the tip is if you have a unique name, then create a subhead or a description.
Yeah,
or part
exactly.
Of it, so that has those words that are searched, that the people are looking for. I want to show about content marketing. I want to show that I can learn more about podcasts.
Yeah, that's one aspect of it which would help you to break that barrier. And first thing first, show up for a query on Apple Podcasts. Because if it's the Pod Files, nobody will look for the pod or files.
Because it's such a unique
And I actually
name.
looked for the Pod Files. I wrote the Pod Files and I was getting X Files and all sorts of things. Like, you want to make sure that you're clear about your identity and you make it unique. So even though the Pod Files is a unique name, you can add something to it, and that helps you get on the top of Apple Podcasts. Other things you can do on Apple is to ensure that the descriptions, the show notes, all of that, they do mention the keywords you're trying to rank for on Apple.
Right.
So if you do that, then obviously you're going to show up, and that really helps.
And what I've also learned from you is that while you could do these things, these searches on AI tools like ChatGPT, I think that you can use even more refined tools or apps to help you discover keywords that are surfacing. And that's part of what you provide as well.
So no secret, you can use Ahrefs, for example, which is normally a place where you can, or SEMrush, that's another tool, where you can look for what people search online. And when I say what people search online, they search on Google, right? Because that's the only thing that they're actually looking into. And actually, they started implementing AI overviews. So now they tell you how many times your brand was mentioned or your pages were mentioned into ChatGPT, for example, or Gemini or the other tools.
You're saying that SEMrush and some other tools can do that?
Ahrefs.
They'll include how you...
Yeah, they started doing this. I haven't toyed with it too much, but I can see, especially on my business, I can see numbers in there and tells me like, look, this is the amount of times you were featured on chat, for example. Supposedly, I think if you pay more, because I don't have that subscription on my software, you can go and look on what query you actually showed up.
That is so crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because so many people, I think, are using tools like ChatGPT and thinking that while it may be training an LLM, it's not going out into the world. And now I'm hearing that, and I've also read some stories about that your information is not as private as you think it is.
It's not. Well, I'll tell you a crazy story. I recently asked ChatGPT about my grand-grandmother. Now, my grand-grandmother was kind of a famous person in Romania under the communism, and she was the only, or maybe one of the few females that managed to kind of like be there in the party. So she had a lot to say about females working and having rights and all that. So she was kind of like a person that was leading that side of the propaganda of the communism and everything.
Yeah.
And I never thought that, like, if I would try to find anything about her in AI, I would get anything. I thought it's just going to be like, oh, we don't know this person or whatever. And I put her name in there. Boom. I got information. And the only thing she has online is like a Wikipedia page.
So because she had a Wikipedia, and it's not easy to get a Wikipedia page. I know many journalists and others, professors who do not have a Wikipedia page. So the fact that she had one does mean that she was
notable enough.
Exactly. Yeah. And so ChatGPT picked that up.
Of course.
We are going to be asking a couple more questions about like when you search for your name and what you can do. But before I go there, I do want to kind of tackle this idea of podcasting. There's been terrestrial radio and all around the world, AM, FM for many, many decades. Mm-hmm. And now here we are in an era where podcasting is on the rise worldwide. In fact, in the US, Edison Research Infinite Dial in 2023 noted that 42% of Americans ages 12 plus now listen to podcasts monthly. And that's up almost double, twice. I mean, it was 12% a decade ago. So numbers are up with podcasting, despite the fact that numbers are down for many media outlets, radio, television, print, for sure, digital. From your vantage point, what do you think is fueling the growth?
Well, I think people want to hear more real stories. They want to hear more insights, backstories, because we have so much already fed to us through social media. And I think people want to connect a little bit more to the people they like and to listen to. So, for example, I listen to podcasts in the car. I don't listen to radio. Every time I turn on radio, I become a little bit depressed. The only thing that you get on radio is current music most of the time, which I like the music that is produced nowadays, some of it. But I want, like, there's so much music out there and they do not play all the music. It depends on what radio you listen, but most of the time they try to play the most current track, trendy track that it's out there, and they overplay it as well, which becomes a bit annoying over time. So listening to radio on long travels, it doesn't make sense. Then there's like those radios where they talk politics and they talk all sorts of things, which it's interesting if you want to be kept up to date, but sometimes these radios, they have some sort of agenda. All radios have an agenda. They maybe say some side of the story, maybe it's more left-wing, right-wing, and you've got now tools that actually look for all those things to see which radio station is not biased and all that. However, podcasting is literally coming from the people, from the indie podcasters, like people that literally like have a studio like mine.
Well, you have a pretty fancy studio, let's be serious. I don't know if everyone has a studio like yours.
Right. But it doesn't matter. You can record a podcast via Riverside or Zoom or remote podcasting. Doesn't matter what it is. But people, it's a decentralized, I would say, type of media where people can speak their mind without being checked too much by the FFC or like body regulators like these. You have more freedom. Like, for example, if you curse on a podcast, I'm not sure if you don't know that, nothing will happen to your show. It will not be pulled down, even on Apple.
What about Apple? It asks.
It puts the explicit tag on it, but that's it. So you can talk whatever you want at the end of the day, and they have no right to take your data down because you own the data, right? On YouTube, when you upload it on YouTube, at the moment you uploaded the file in there, they own that data. It's not yours.
So it's a different kind of situation from YouTube to Apple.
Yeah, Apple aggregates, like takes that data that you fed Apple with. Like, so for example, you host your podcast on Saspod, right? That data, when you upload it, you pay for the server space, $11 a month. And then you've got that data on your own server. Saspod cannot interfere with whatever you have in there. Obviously, we try to make sure that you do not send anything that would damage anyone in any way. For example, we do have some stuff in the terms of service and in our policies that kind of like excludes us from being involved into whatever you do. But the point is that you are the owner of that data. You send the data to Apple, and it's up to Apple to ensure that everything that is on their platform is 100%, correct.
Yeah.
And they do not do a lot of that because they do understand that podcasting is kind of like an open medium. Everybody owns a bit of podcasting, if that makes sense. We all make the podcasting.
It's so true. And I actually think about decentralization as a key word, because when you think about technology, I think technology being that we all used to have to watch television together. I don't know if you remember this, but back in the day, everyone would gather and the news was on at a certain time, the shows came on, and now we have devices galore, right? We've got phone devices. I just got an invite from Meta saying there's some glasses coming out with all the features in it. And, there's just such technology that allows us to be mobile. And podcasts are something that you can listen to anywhere, including your car. I also think it's generational, right? That younger generations are not so tied to a brand or a particular name. They might get their news, for example, from Reddit or social media or a search of the keywords. Today, there's a big storm here. Yeah. And so if they wanted information on that, they might do a Google search, or some days now they're doing a ChatGPT search. Yeah. Joe Rogan and other personalities who may not be on traditional like network or legacy media outlets have found not only a platform to deliver their unique messages, but also an incredibly large audience. So I think that podcasting, as you said, is so much more about decentralization, about getting the content that you want. But because there are so many podcasts out there, how do new podcasters, aspiring podcasters, people thinking about, should I do a podcast because I have a message to share? How do they compete with so many voices out there already?
Well, even in my niche, right, there's loads of podcasts that explore content marketing, for example. Every time you start a podcast, you need to think what makes that podcast unique, right? Why would people listen to it? And obviously you compete with a lot of people out there that start podcasts, but I'll tell you something, not a lot of podcasts are good. I would say 80% of them are just noise. What I mean by noise is they're not well researched, they're not well recorded, audio is bad, video is bad, discussions and the guests they bring on the show maybe not very relevant. Most of them are like that. That doesn't mean they're bad podcasts. It's just that they maybe that for that business or that influencers is maybe not a core focus, right?
Yeah.
You can easily break through that noise. If you make your show stand out from a production quality point of view and as well from a content point of view, like what you actually have in the podcast, what value you provide and the way you deliver it and all that, I think it's easy to break through. Podcasting is much easier than YouTube or any other format that has been there for years. I mean, podcasting has been in existence for many, many years, since the early 2000s, but it hasn't been as popular. It was dormant for many years, and it started becoming popular when I actually started getting into podcasting, which was quite
well. Maybe you brought the popularity along. With X Factor.
Yeah.
I think of that show with Selena Gomez. I think it's Murders in the Building or something. It's like a sitcom, and that is about a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That they're when they think to solve a murder mystery or whatever, they're using it for their podcast, and it's become so popular now. But you said it's easy. And I want to challenge that a little bit because, I teach journalism. I'm now currently teaching in the Becca department, which is broadcast and electronic. It's just a long name to say broadcast. And I particularly teach broadcast journalism. And so I had been dreaming about starting a podcast for years, but I thought, well, I don't have the technical skills and I don't want to put out a product that doesn't sound good. And so I came to you. I found you. And I have to say, investing in the quality of sound and now, the visual aspect is worth it for me, because one of the things I knew coming in as a professor is that the number one thing that they teach in the Becca department, I think that people really understand, and when you look at great movies, when you look at great shows, when you hear music, is the quality of sound. So no matter the message, I come from the writing, the print background, no matter how strong your message is, if the sound is not of utmost, of highest quality, no one can really listen to it. So can you tell us a little bit more about how and why it's important to invest and also just the quality and how do you get it there?
So that's great, because you reminded me of a previous guest I had on the show. He talked about public speaking, right? And why public speaking is an important asset to have as a business owner or like any public figure. It's important to use your voice properly, and people train a lot to use their voice effectively so they can move their point across, right? When you talk into a microphone, however, all that can be taken away if a bad audio engineer messed something up, or you don't use the right equipment, or you use it wrongly. Anything like that could take away from the power of your voice. Doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter as much anymore. So what you need to do is to ensure that you sound clear, and it's not hard to do that. Obviously, it takes a little bit of technical understanding, but you can come to like businesses like mine to help you out with that. But once you master that skill, and like other skills that I took an interest in, you learn a little bit about sound, how audio works. We live in a digital world now.
Yeah.
So the only interface you have between you and the other people across the internet is a mic. It could be the microphone from your laptop, from your MacBook Pro. Could be this microphone, could be another mic. But at the end of the day, the only way your voice will be captured will be through a microphone. Right. There's no other way for you to talk with other people around the world unless you meet them face to face.
Yeah, and that's why I really appreciated when I started working with you. You said, Yumi, go out and get this type of microphone. It's affordable. You can get it, but it's going to improve your quality.
Exactly.
I probably would not have done that. I would not have been thinking in that. And then you said, lighting, you got to get this and it's really cheap. It's not something that's expensive. So for me, even though I've been a journalist for many years, I teach, all this stuff, I realized that podcasting, especially if you're thinking YouTube, it does require certain skills or trying to understand what makes a great show, like what makes, the lighting is important. The equipment is important. And I also appreciate the fact that you come on to the shows that I record back home in the Bay Area, and you'll talk to not only me about my sound, but you'll also talk to the guest.
Yeah, exactly. You can do this for an affordable price. Definitely the first step for you would be your laptop has a microphone in it, and you probably have some headphones around. You could start with that, obviously. However, I would say if you start a podcast, you're going to do more than just Zoom recordings with colleagues and stuff like that. You're going to record something you're going to put it out there for eternity, right? For as long as you want. So the problem is that once it's out there, if you look at that 4 years, back, let's say in 4 years, you're going to look at your stuff. Will you be proud of what you've produced, or will you be like,
take it down?
I want to take it down, right? So, because loads of people do this because they evolve in mentality over time, and they evolve in the way they want to appear online, and it's all about the way you actually appear, and you maintain your brand. And there's also something called audio branding. and that starts to become even more important. Yeah, it's part of your brand. It's part of your audio brand to make sure that you sound good, and obviously the message to come across and to be taken seriously at the end of the day. Because if you don't sound good, you sound echoey. If people may not take you seriously, and that little thing that you haven't done properly, you haven't invested 100 pounds in a microphone, could take the entire effort. You pay maybe hundreds and hundreds of dollars for, let's say, somebody to edit your show, or maybe you put the time yourself and edit it yourself, and all that time goes down the drain, and money goes down the drain because you haven't invested in the right equipment. And that's sad.
And you make, well, I'm thinking about a lot of things, but let me start with, there is an AI tool called Descript. And I had a guest from Scientific American, and she uses Descript. A lot of people are using Descript, but I think what you bring up is a really important part, that if you don't capture audio that doesn't sound echoey, if you capture echoey audio, it doesn't matter if you're using a great AI tool like Descript or anything else, and that's helping you edit the show. The sound is where it starts, and the equipment is so important.
AI has done a good favor to humanity at the moment with audio enhancement. Before that appearing on the market, I had to do a lot of work on audio restoration, especially on guests that sound bad, because sometimes guests do not come prepared, and maybe that person is very important. You don't want to reschedule, and
they don't want to reschedule.
Yeah, and you want to record the moment, and then see what we can do with that after. AI can help you out with audio enhancement quite a bit, but at the same time, it can also go the other way. If you don't feed AI the right information, the right type of audio, even though it's badly recorded, you could end up with something that sounds worse, actually. That can happen. They try to improve, and I see improvements, every month. And one tool that I recommend for people, if they want to try it out, is called Adobe Enhance. And it's an interesting tool. However, it does sound like AI. So it has a particular sound, and I think that particular sound, the more people use it, it will start to fade away. So if more people use the same sound, you have no uniqueness, and in the back of your mind, you'll feel like there's something that I don't like about this, or there's something that doesn't sound authentic to me.
Right.
And that kind of like could trigger people, maybe just hit skip on your podcast, for example. But it's useful that we have those, especially for the recordings that are really, really bad, and we can make them sound good. But there are the traditional ways of doing it as well.
And so when you're thinking about recording yourself, you're saying we should use basically get a microphone, get some headphones, can be cheap, but better than just trying to record from a Zoom. Okay. Now, what does your business model look like from the production to monetization?
Yeah. So first thing first, when clients come on board and work with us, one thing that I'm really focused on is to make sure that the client understands why they want to start a podcast, and they understand that there's going to be a bit of a learning curve for them, and I'm there to support them in that process, and also challenge them a little bit to see if starting a podcast is actually something good for them, or is like maybe, a lost opportunity for them in terms of maybe their business model doesn't fit well into this space, or could be that maybe they don't know how to talk properly in the mic, and they don't have a vibe, like an aura around them when it comes to podcasting. Not everybody is a public speaker. Not everybody can talk into a microphone. Not everybody can say the right things at the right time. They get nervous, all that stuff that can happen, right? So it's not for everyone, right? So I want to make sure that the client understands that if they want to start a podcast, they need to be the best at delivering a message, because otherwise, whatever they do around it, it's just not gonna cut it, right? It's just gonna be wasted effort. So I challenge them about that. So once I go after that challenge, once we decide, okay, podcasting is good for you, and I actually do have an onboarding process where I show them what target audience may have, what's the potential of your podcast and see if the podcast idea is sound, then we can actually go and start producing the show and creating episodes and all that.
So there's work that you do with your client before the show airs so that they're truly prepared and ready when it launches.
Exactly. And one thing that we do, all this stuff in the beginning, it's most of the services that I mentioned are complementary. The reason is because we don't want to edit a podcast that doesn't have potential, because we invest a lot in editing, and we invest in creating an intro, outro. We invest effort and team effort into it, and then seeing a podcast after 5 episodes experience pod fade, that's really annoying.
What did you call it?
Pod fade.
Pod fade is a word. Okay, is a thing. All right.
It is.
What does that mean?
It means that some people give up on podcasting after a certain amount of episodes. And that's sad, because the reason why that happens is because they haven't planned it correctly.
I can relate to that. My sister got sick last year, and I got to a point where I just, started to feel like I couldn't do anything for a while.
Yeah.
And I took a break, as you know.
Breaks are good.
But it was really a calling in me to come back and to be able to reconnect, and then to launch the YouTube portion has been so invigorating. And I can tell you that as a client, but also someone who loves podcasting, is that what this show has really been able to do for me is to give me a platform, unlike any other, because it's really driven by me, to talk about and explore what AI has meant and means to journalism and the media. And it really gave me kind of a seat at the table when I thought about, as a professor, someone teaching it, what should young people who are studying this field and want to get into the field of broadcast, what do they need to know? How has AI changed the game? And now what I'm learning and really experiencing are people reaching out, being able to go to conferences to talk about it. And the other thing that's been really cool is that some of the shows that I recorded a while ago, people are still coming back to it. And that is something I never thought about. You know?
They have podcasting has a very long life.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting, because I see downloads on clients' podcasts happening on old podcasts that they released years ago. And when you monetize a podcast, for example, and you sell ads on your show, the bigger the collection of episodes, the more downloads you can generate, the more opportunities you can generate for your advertiser, the more they pay you. So it's a great business model.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. So podcasting helps you to do that. And I've seen episodes, right, that became popular because some sort of event happened, and then that made that episode relevant.
Yeah.
And that episode just almost regenerated itself, if that makes sense.
It's amazing. And I'm aspiring, when I think of the podcasts I love to listen to, one of them is Mel Robbins. And
I know her.
Right? She's got that can-do voice and always encouraging. But what's amazing to me is that I never thought I would listen to so many ads or commercials, because I'm like, well, podcasting is cool because I don't have to listen to ads. But because I like her content so much, I end up listening to all of her.
And somehow they aren't that annoying on podcasting
it's
for
weird,
whatever reason.
You know, I don't know if it's because it's her voice saying she uses the products. I don't know, but she's definitely a role model. Now, there is another podcast. You were talking about quality and the need for really kind of spending that time producing it well. There's a show that I love the topic on, and it's Carl Jung, and all of these thoughts about our psychology and all of that. But the problem is the echo sound that I hear, then I don't want to listen to it. So I really do end up listening to shows where the quality of the sound is high. I'm thinking about All About Soul is another one. I think when I think about what I love about podcasts, it's really about those that are well produced.
Yeah. So I listen to How I Build This.
Okay.
By Raz, something like that. that podcast is produced very well, and it even has immersive audio into it, a little bit of music and a little bit of like production to make the story kind of like flow.
Yeah.
And the entire concept of the show is interviewing business people, how they build a business from scratch. And they interview like really, really high profile guests. And it's quite interesting to hear the story of how somebody actually built a business.
I love listening to those stories.
They went through. And obviously audio is a big aspect in there. And the guests themselves, they have good audio as well, most of the time. And going back to the idea of listening to podcasts in a car, I'm not sure if you listen to a bad podcast in a car, but you cannot hear anything.
Yeah.
Because you are on the motorway.
That's possibly
the actual car makes a lot of noise,
right?
And if the audio doesn't cut through, that noise is lost, and I'm just going to put something else.
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
Right. Or if one voice is high and then the other voice is really low.
You'll need to keep dialing the volume up and down.
That can be frustrating as well.
Yeah, it's not good.
Before we move into a little bit more about AI, we've been touching upon it with almost every issue, but what would you say is one big mistake you see people make when it comes to starting a podcast?
I would say the biggest mistake is they probably start a podcast, and I've seen that in many blogs, many articles, like, well, start a podcast, you just need to put some content out there and that's it.
Yeah.
So when they start with that mentality, I think that's the biggest mistake they can do. Instead of like doing, and most of the stuff that you can do is free, right? Loads of things you can do are free. You don't need to invest a lot of money into it. If there's going to be an investment, it would be minimal in the beginning. Starting a podcast without preparation, just impulsively and hoping for something great to happen, I think it's just a waste of time.
Tough road.
And there's loads of articles you're gonna write. Like you're gonna read loads of articles out there. They say, start a podcast. You just need that, and just do that. And it makes it look so easy and so like, it's just another thing when it's not.
Yeah.
The thing is that with YouTube, you can pull content down from YouTube if you really want to. Right? If you want to, you can delete the videos.
Yeah.
But with podcasting, once you put your podcast on an RSS feed, that RSS feed is distributed on different platforms. And then after that, these platforms distribute the RSS feed on further
so it's
platforms.
Out of your hands.
So it's more, it would be really hard to delete an episode if you really want to. You could delete it from your RSS feed, but some players will still keep your content out there. So you want to make sure that it's something good.
Yeah. So the lesson there is be proud of the work before you put it on an RSS feed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's out of your control.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned some AI tools that you can use in the workflow in podcasting. What are your other go-to AI tools?
So I mentioned Adobe Enhance, which is a good audio restoration tool. And it used to be free for a while until they started putting a paywall on top of it. I have used, obviously, a little bit of Descript as well. I found Descript good for beginners and for DIYers, but I do find it very limiting to podcast production at a professional level. Is just because it's made to be easy, but there's not a lot of flexibility around certain things when it comes to the way you cut stuff. And using AI technology to cut an episode, I do have a problem with that actually. I do not like that idea because they say that they're gonna cut ums and uhs and stuff like that. I've tested how it works. When it cuts the ums or the ahs, sometimes it interprets some words as not being the right words, and then also when that cut happens, there's clicks still remaining in there. You need to go and back and correct all this stuff. So it almost like it gives you more work than. So for example, for me, editing a podcast, 2 hours of work, let's say an hour long, maybe 3, depending on how bad the podcast is. If the podcast is fluent and people are just talking and it's recorded well, it could take up to 2 hours. So I can say an hour podcast, double the time of that hour, and it will take me 2 hours. Other editors would take maybe 3, 4, 5 hours. It depends how experienced you are. A beginner, somebody that never edited the podcast before, it will take probably 7, 8 hours.
Wow.
Right?
So it's really...
But this script cuts that a little bit, but you still need to go back and correct, and it's still in... this script still has to learn on how to cut an episode to still feel natural, to still have because sometimes certain things that you say should still be there, even though aren't perfect. It makes the podcast more authentic.
I am so glad you said that, because I did try Descript for a minute and I felt like it was cutting, the whole thing, but then I felt like the whole timing.
And editing is not just about ums.
Exactly.
Because that's a lot of people don't understand that. And I remember there were clients coming to me and say, what am I going to get in this service? And I'm going to tell, look, we're going to clean up the recording. First thing first, we're going to restore the audio, making sure that it sounds good, mix, mastering, and all that. We're also going to cut filler words, but also we're going to do some editorial decisions as well. So it's not just going to be like a mechanical service that we provide to you. It's also about how do we make this episode to have a story to start with, and that really is gonna drive more listeners to your show. So we help with that part as well, and this script cannot help you with that at the moment. You need to do it manually anyway. So when you do that, you could as well cut the everything else. So I do everything in one go instead of seeing these as two different processes, if that makes sense. So yeah, this script is a great tool to have to enhance your production workflow. Other tools that have been out there for many, many years, they do have something that if you look at it, you'll say it's AI.
Yeah.
But it's not. It is, I would say, some sort of like language model process. So what they do, for example, if you have noise in your audio, you could analyze the noise, and based on that noise, it will apply a filter cleaning the audio out.
Okay.
You basically need to feed the software with some sort of element in order for it to recognize that element and remove it. And I use Isotope RX for that. It's a very expensive software, but it's Isotope RX.
You're saying that tool doesn't use...
It doesn't use AI, but it uses some algorithmic technology that in front of people, some people would appear like it's AI, but it's not artificial intelligence. It actually runs natively on your machine, and it's used by sound designers, by film directors, by loads of people that want to restore dialogue in general, and you can use it for all sorts of things. I took out babies crying out from recordings with that, or dogs barking. You can manipulate and you can take out certain parts of the audio. You can be very surgical with it and still keep the natural vibe of the audio.
I think that's so important. And you mentioned earlier, while all these tools are out there, certainly you can use AI in so many ways. The idea of sounding like a robot is the idea that not only scares me, but worries me the most.
Yeah.
Because I think that if we all sound alike, what is the point of, creating stories?
You see that in writing.
Yeah.
There's like now tools that are detecting AI in writing.
Yeah.
And they devalue your, like they push down your writing. For example, in SEO, there's like a thing about Google doesn't like AI, right? Doesn't like AI content. However, they do create AI, right? They have Gemini.
Lots of content marketers, right, are creating,
So there's like Google has Gemini.
Yeah.
However, they want to have only original content on Google. They don't want recycled content from AI appear on Google as being like good content. That's something that happens a lot. And I think that will go over in other industries, not just in copywriting, but also in audio. So you don't want, like, for example, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but already the AI voice from Facebook and TikTok started to disappear. They used to be like 1 year or 2 years ago, AI voice on Reels was all the rage.
Okay.
I don't see that as much
Yeah,
anymore. I think it starts to fade out because people understand that it becomes annoying. You hear the same voices on every single reel because everybody's using the same software.
Yeah, or the same song.
Or the same song. But now you said that you want to talk about this a little bit, but AI cloning, right? That's something that becomes quite scary to me. So you could feed AI with your own voice.
True.
You can have your own material.
Yeah.
You can put it there and then it can generate your own voice.
It is true. And I have looked into those tools as well, but I feel like they're still a little bit glitchy and still not really you. And it's, to me, clear. Like I'll see videos now where it looks like a CEO or someone famous, but the way that they're talking, there's just something that to me makes it clear that it's AI.
Yeah.
It's so funny now because we're in an age where when you're looking at content, you not only have to find out, well, is this content true? Who did it come from? And now you have to think, is it a robot? It's a crazy, crazy time that we're in.
It happens a lot in politics. You'll find speeches and dialogue. And I can tell when somebody speaks in a church, right? And they sound very dry. They sound almost like it was recorded in a studio. There's something wrong with that. But most people will not give that a second thought. They do not see that.
Well, for example, Coldplay, the concert where that infamous moment of the kiss cam, and the couple, the CEO and the HR person all together and kind of hiding their faces. One of the videos, for some reason, lots of clips, my algorithm was like, yes, Yumi, you want to know all about this. But one of the clips was seemingly the CEO who eventually resigned, him saying, this is how I feel, blah, blah, blah. But I knew right away it was fake. It was AI generated, maybe only because I'm in this, kind of studying it every day. But I thought, how scary that we're in an era where, your likeness can be used to say words that you never said.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, some people don't know. Some people aren't looking for those slight cues to say.
Especially, I don't want to be rude or anything, but older people, the older generation, they cannot see it. They cannot see it. I had fights with my grandma about certain things that or said on Facebook and all that. And I told my grandma, look, what you've been watching is not real. And she would not believe me, right? And they wash people's brains. There's no authority of stopping those. And Facebook, like Meta, Twitter, or X, everybody's changing their names now. But every social media platform, they don't do enough. I think they should do a lot more on making sure that misinformation is not spread, including in podcasting. Podcasting is not very regulated.
No, it's not.
I do feel there should be some regulation on it because you can generally talk whatever you want. And by the time they catch you, it's too late. The information is already in the public space, public domain, and you cannot stop it anymore because other people will create content on that. And it's dangerous. And other nations, right, that have a political agenda can manipulate so much now. It's a weapon.
Absolutely. And when you think about politics, that is one area where deep fakes, misinformation, disinformation, manipulation, all of those things, propaganda are kind of out of control because there is so little regulation.
Well, I was telling somebody something that back in the days, right, if you wanted to spread misinformation, you needed quite a lot of money to do that. It would not be free. For example, just looking at Germany, right? Yeah. And Hitler, right? He was an influential figure that was able to make, everybody to hate Jews and to hate other nations and to spread propaganda and all that. He was influential, and obviously there was a lot of money and a lot of strength in the back to make that happen. Now, somebody that uses Canva or some AI generation software, one subscription can make somebody say something that they never said. They can put it online, which is free. You can reach millions of people, and that could spark wars easily. That you could make Iran like another country, like Russia, for example, bomb another country because you made somebody say something that they never said. And to be honest, like politicians themselves do not see AI. Sometimes they have a team of people looking in everything and whatever, but if somebody wants to kind of like manipulate certain things, it could spark issues in the world, and it's a lot easier than before. And we need to see it like the way we haven't seen Hitler coming to power. That's the way we don't see what's happening now with AI, where it could create certain ripples in society that aren't normal.
That is frightening. And actually, that you kind of started to talk about the future, because I wanted to ask you before we move on, which is, where do you see things going in the future, not just with podcasting, but with the larger scope of media, communications, and AI?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I have that spaceship there. I'm not sure if you see it.
Okay.
But yeah. So I like Star Trek. And I would like to believe that our future is going to be a positive future, the way Star Trek presents it, where we are going to look into, multi-species, galactic civilizations and going from planet to planet and doing all that crazy stuff, but while using all that technology and even making technology be at some point almost like human. And I do like that idea if it's controlled. I think it's great. I think it's going to help us out. But if it's not controlled properly, I think it's going to be something dystopian. So in general, let's say focus on media. I think there's going to be a lot of use of AI, and people that use AI in a way that is not authentic, right? And they try to show certain work that has been created by AI as being theirs work completely, without manipulating it, for example, I use AI every day for research purposes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I know that the work that I present to somebody is going to be my own words.
That's right.
Or even if you generate something, just make sure that you understand what's generated and maybe put it in your own tone and stuff like that. But I do see that there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a loop of information that's going to be created. For example, putting AI content that is not checked, it's just rubbish, right? Putting it out on the internet, and the internet takes that again and feeds it again and feeds it again. I think that could become an issue, and that's the darker side that I see. So what I'm saying here is there's gonna be too much content, like too much, because everybody can create content. There's gonna be too much content, and people will not know what's authentic, what's real. AI would become very good at doing human level content at some point. I do think so. And I'm challenging ChatGPT. Sometimes I tell him like, look, write me an article. And then after that, I say, nah, that's not good enough for me. I want it to be more human-like. I want it to be, and I'm asking AI, for example, I'm changing certain things in the article. I'm putting the article back in AI and say, tell me what in this article doesn't sound human. And it will tell me exactly what the parts don't sound human. So AI understands already that he has faults. It has faults.
Yes.
So it understands, but is not programmed yet to fix these faults by himself. Unless you tell him.
And that's part of like my training, when I go and do presentations, that's exactly what I talk about, which is I think that if you can understand how to prompt, but also how to get this tool to sound like you. So whether you're writing a headline that you want to be SEO ready, whether you want to write a summary on an analysis that you're looking at, I think feeding information into that system, whether you use Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, all of these tools have their strengths, but I think the reality is that they sound like what they think you want. Like, oh, you want to sound like a PhD, or you want to sound like everyone else.
Yeah.
There's so much content that's already out there. The fact is that what the LLM has learned is, well, here's the mass amount of majority of content, and it sounds like this. But the reality is, as human beings, we each sound very differently. And as writers, I think that you can use AI tools, but I think the way that you use them is incredibly important to maintaining your voice. And that's kind of where I focus on when I am talking to people about the use of AI as a trainer. I think I want to be mindful of your time.
That's fine. We're going to go and have something to eat after this.
Absolutely. But I want to really quickly talk about something that's a little more personal and relevant to anyone building a brand today. And we know, and you mentioned it, that people are increasingly turning to ChatGPT instead of Google and to look folks up. So, instead of going to, your Google and saying, who is Yumi Wilson, right? And seeing what page I'm on or whatever, you can actually go into ChatGPT. So my question is, have you ever asked ChatGPT, who is Bogdan Bratis?
Yeah. So I do actually ask ChatGPT quite often, who is Bogdan Bratis, because I'm really interested to know what ChatGPT knows about me. The reason why I want to know is because obviously I would expect a client, for example, to look me up on ChatGPT. Do you know Bogdan Bratis? And they will give you a certain list of facts about me. And I want to know what facts are in there. Is it right? Is it wrong? Does it give a full story? So you could actually manipulate that.
Yeah. What do you mean? Wait, you're saying that you can change the results?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, you can change the results of what ChatGPT will show anyone. ChatGPT, what it does at the end of the day, is taking information from Bing, Google, all these search platforms, right? What you want to do is, if you want ChatGPT to have a certain narrative about you, you want to feed that narrative in different websites, different authoritative websites. So that starts, for example, what you say on LinkedIn. ChatGPT has access to posts that are indexed by Google.
Okay.
Right.
So anything that appears, anything that you have on social media, like LinkedIn, that's public, that goes into, maybe you'll find it on Google or maybe find it, you're saying that it then goes into tools like ChatGPT.
Yeah. That's one of the tools. That's one of the first places where he's going to look you up in LinkedIn. I found that quite often. LinkedIn is like, especially if you ask about a founder or a business person, it will go on LinkedIn and look you up. So make sure that your bio, for example, in your LinkedIn is like top notch.
It's funny that you say that, Bogdan, because I do LinkedIn profile makeovers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that there's a benefit. I didn't know particularly that how much LinkedIn influenced ChatGPT, but I do know that optimizing the profile, including a summary, using keywords.
Everything on the internet, every single part of the internet where you're mentioned, it will influence ChatGPT. Doesn't matter where. And it started to actually pick up certain tools. I talked with one of my previous guests who lives in Glasgow, Craig Campbell. He's an amazing SEO expert. He showed me, I forgot the name of the tool, but he showed me a tool that can actually take information out of audio. So what we're talking now on the podcast, what we're talking on the podcast, it becomes public and becomes part of the knowledge. And that tool can take that information. So whatever I said in this podcast now, it could become very easily a part
searchable.
Searchable. So it's because these podcasts are transcribed most of the time.
Right.
And Apple, for example, transcribes podcasting automatically. If you don't check, there's like a certain checkbox you can uncheck there if you want. But it's easy with transcription software. Audio becomes text. Text can become information for AI. So you can manipulate that in loads of ways. But the more authoritative the source, like for example, LinkedIn is a very authoritative source as a domain, right? It's a very old company, and whatever post is in there, ChatGPT will trust that basically that post is relevant or that post is somehow relevant to the query that you're trying to search for. But you can add your profile, like your name, for example, on other platforms. Like, for example, you talked about Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia is a very trusted source. So if you get yourself on Wikipedia,
that's my goal.
Yeah, you can notable enough, and you'll do it. But if you have done something notable, you can get yourself on Wikipedia. You can not control the narrative because you're not actually allowed to edit your own Wikipedia. I'm not sure if you know, because it's a very strict place in terms of like what you say. Normally, somebody else should create the Wikipedia for you. Now, that can happen. If you're notable enough, people can create a Wikipedia or start a Wikipedia for you. And then from that point, you could probably manipulate that as well if you really want to.
All right. And then the last question I have in that area is, can you manipulate or can you influence what ChatGPT says about you by typing those on, like those responses in yourself and using the model and being public?
So from my understanding, so when you feed ChatGPT, you talk to it.
Yeah.
Is not using that as information to provide to
the public.
No, but it uses that information to give it back to you.
Okay.
As a person. So it stores that into its own memory, and you can talk with AI based on your own experiences, but somebody else with another account will not be able to see that.
I thought I was teaching the LLM every single time I put in data when I'm in public.
You teach it from your point of view.
Got you.
And that's it. Because to me, that sounds like breaking into my life completely.
But you did hear about the stories recently where there has been some admission that content that we were putting into ChatGPT is now being discovered on other sites.
That worries me a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kind of crazy world we're entering, right? You know, AI itself is getting...
That's a violation of your privacy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. But I asked ChatGPT about my brother, for example, and doesn't know who my brother is because my brother is not a public person.
Interesting.
Knows nothing about it. So then I told ChatGPT, my brother is Alex, is my brother. After that, after a few days, I asked it, do you know who my brother is? Didn't know. Forgot about it.
So really interesting. And are you using the paid model for? So okay, that's really. I'm going to test that around.
Yeah, try to do certain things with unknown people.
Maybe that's my problem.
Teach it whatever you want about that person, and see if that comes back.
So if they've been off the radar, if they've been off the grid, if you will, then it is harder for a model like ChatGPT, to discover. Or
if they have a LinkedIn profile, though,
I think everyone I know has a LinkedIn profile.
If they have a LinkedIn profile, then they will know some information.
Yeah.
Or if they appeared in some sort of list of something, like for example, my grandma. She works at the council, and she was on the board in there. It's a legal requirement for you to show there as how much salary you get paid. In Romania, for example, each person that works for the public, for the government, they need to show exactly their salaries. So she was listed on the website.
Yeah,
so then I asked, do you know who my grandma is? And then basically it told me, first thing first, it told me like, no, I don't. This person doesn't feel like it has a presence. And then I said, my grandma is from this village.
Oh, so once you added a location.
And then he said, oh, okay, I found an information on the council website that she works in this blah, blah, blah. And then I said, yeah, of course, that's my grandma, right? And then started to actually crawl even further and then found a newspaper that she was mentioned in. And now I think ChatGPT has a profile on her.
And I think that's another great tip, which is, if you ask a question on an AI tool and it's not something that you're happy with, I would not give up. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love using ChatGPT is because it's almost like in an experimental stage where when you use Google, like you're doing a search, you have to ask the question, your spelling doesn't have to be perfect, but you kind of have to know what you want. With ChatGPT, you start with, okay, find out information about my great-grandmother. And if it doesn't come back or the result is not satisfactory, you can actually challenge the AI tool, which I always encourage people to do. I do it with, any assignment that I'm doing. I'll say, here's the slide deck. And I use Gemini a lot for slides. To create the images. And sometimes I'll just say, this is a terrible result.
Yeah.
Now imagine saying that to a friend or a colleague,
You will get so
who's
offended.
been editing, right?
Yeah.
What I love about it is you can just say like, this is terrible. This is a terrible result.
And then it would be very kind and come back with another
and
one.
it will be like, and you can, and the other thing that people are learning is it's just too nice. So if you want the AI tool to be not so nice, you want a critic, you want someone to help challenge you, you can actually direct it to do so.
Yeah.
And so that's another little tip.
Yeah.
All right. We are getting to closing time, but before we go, I want to ask you 2 questions. 1, what excites you most about where podcasting and AI are headed?
Well, I think it's going to become more and more of a mainstream platform over time. I see many people start podcasts, and TV and radio and all these old formats, I think they start to fade. I don't watch TV. I don't listen to radio. Here in the UK, you need to pay license for that. I'm not interested. And I think most people of my age, especially, they are the same. My brother doesn't watch.
Yeah, well, the research supports you. Pew Research Center, which does a State of the Media report almost every year, has shown that the numbers for television, network, and cable, not so much cable. Cable's actually doing quite well in certain areas, but network, local news, certainly print and digital, those numbers are down. And the decline, when you look at the charts, are down. If you want to check that out, it's Pew Research. But where they see the growth, number 1 is podcasting. And also platforms like YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I use YouTube on a regular basis. Yeah, I think that's what excites me, is that this is going to become even more bigger than it is.
Yeah.
We are just seeing the start of it. Internet is 30, 40 years old. I don't know exactly how old it is, but it's 30 years old. I would say 90s is the start of the internet.
Yeah, in terms of it growing popular, becoming like in everyone's home.
Yeah, because it was,
I don't know if you remember back in the day,
or something in the beginning.
AOL, the beep.
Oh yeah, the dial. I got internet right after that ended.
Okay.
Right. So, but I know what it is. But my internet was very slow in the beginning. I remember that. And now I can download and upload stuff from my studio with incredible speeds.
It's amazing.
And I can talk to people across the world. So I'm excited what's going to happen with the internet in general. I think it's just the start of it, because imagine, since we had cars, or since we had the first engine, we started with trains and
horses.
Well, the engine started to make the trains become a reality, and then like cars, personal cars and all that, and now we are flying with planes across the world. Now I see AI more of a plane now in the internet technology. It's AI is something that is just gonna make everything so much crazier. But in a positive way, I hope. So it depends what the governments are doing with it.
I hope so too. And where can people find you if they want to launch a show or learn more about what you do?
So you can find me anywhere. So I would say Google my name, you'll find me, Bogdan Bratis. Now, if you want to launch your show, I would definitely encourage you use Yumi's link. It's there in the show notes and in the YouTube description. You can join. It's an affiliate link. You can talk to me, book a call, and then you can, if you want to start your podcast, I can help you out with that. And if you want to use my podcast hosting services, that's also there as well. So yeah, this is who I am. And hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I think it was great.
Yay! Today, I'm so excited for so many reasons to be here in Glasgow, in Scotland. Even though it is storming today, I'm still finding it beautiful.
Flores.
And to meet
he has a name, so he's big.
Okay, Florence. And to meet my producer, the person who really puts it all together, not just for my show, but for so many other shows. I want to thank Bogdan Bratis, producer, creative, business owner. Thank you for making this show sound and look better every time we do it, and for inviting us into your home and giving us a view of your beautiful studio.
Thank you.
And if you like this show, please share it, rate it, drop a note, do all those fun things. Let me know what you think. I am on LinkedIn, easy place to find me. Website is yumiwilson.me, and subscribe if you can. Have a great day.